Hey viewers of the channel. Originally I was going to do a comparative analysis of Wars, Frost, and Horizon all in one video, but that proved too time consuming. I eventually decided to focus only on Wars and its companion mod Peace. The reason I chose Wars and Peace is very simple. There's no shortage of reviews and retrospectives about Frost and Horizon because they've existed for years and are very popular. The Wars family of mods released only a few months ago and has received comparatively little fanfare. This made them excellent candidates for a review. After a 30-hour playthrough and a look under the hood in Xedit, I'd say I know enough about these mods' changes to present them accurately and reach some conclusions about them. You know I like to give away my conclusions at the beginning. I don't want to be too hard on mods that must have taken thousands of hours of development time over the past 7 years, but the more I played them, the more I wished there was a Wars Light mod that replaced all of Fallout 4's ballistic weapons and added a few new ones without making any gameplay changes. I really hated Peace. There was pretty much nothing I liked in that mod. Wars itself has some good ideas and well-implemented features, but it has an equal number of tedious, poorly made features. Additionally, these mods have serious performance issues that will cause stuttering and increased loading times no matter what hardware you have. That's the short story on why I can't recommend Wars or Peace, but obviously I won't leave it at that. These mods deserve a more thorough examination. First off, I'll talk about load order and compatibility issues. I'll say right off the bat, you absolutely need to read and follow the installation instructions on Nexus mods to a T, or else there will be problems. It would be advisable to start over and create a new load order just for Wars and Peace because most mods out there are going to be incompatible. For example, all weapon mods will be incompatible with Wars unless they are patched. So far, only 2 weapons have received official patches. Any mod that edits survival mode, such as survival options, will be incompatible with Peace. In general, the only mods that are guaranteed to be safe to use with Wars or Peace are mods that have patches, such as Sim Settlements 2. It should also be safe to load weather and world space editing mods like NACX or A Forest. As far as I know, neither Wars nor Peace affect weather, and they make very few cell edits, so feel free to go crazy with visual mods. Many smaller mods should be okay to use as well. I can confirm Sleep or Save is fully compatible with Wars and Peace. I didn't encounter any problems using it, and Fallout 4 Edit reported no conflicts. Real.ai and other game settings / combat style AI mods will be fine, but a few of their settings will either be overwritten or overwrite Wars depending on their load order position. I'm not sure about Pack Attack. I didn't try it, and I would be worried about script latency if it's used alongside Wars, especially if you want to load Sim Settlements 2 on top. Basic stuff like Pre-Visibeam's Repair Pack, Buff Out 4, long loading times fix, classic holstered weapons, those are all working great, I can confirm it. SKK's Fast Start mods work great. I would use them instead of Start Me Up because some of Start Me Up's traits might be unbalanced for Wars. It also takes less time to start a new game with SKK's mods. As for other mods, you can try them. If they're small, they might work. True damage, better locational damage, maim, anything like that will be incompatible. Do not use any other overhaul mods with Wars. Now, I'm going to outline all of Wars' issues and features one by one, and then I'll cover Peace and do the same. You will most likely not have this issue, but I had an unsolvable problem with Wars' HUD. Wars is supposed to add HUD elements showing your weapon condition and ammo type, but I could not for the life of me get them to appear. Instead, debug messages in the top left corner of the screen kept me notified of my condition, and I had to use my Pip-Boy to check the current ammo type. It wasn't a big deal because the mod was fully functional aside from the HUD not working. Looking at the Nexus comments page, I couldn't find anyone with the same problem as me, so I have to assume I did something wrong, although I don't know what I did wrong. After creating a new character, the HUD started working, but I couldn't fix my old save, so I just dealt with it. Again, I don't blame the mod, it's my own fault for powering through and not starting a new save. I will, however, blame Wars for my performance woes. I don't think I've ever seen Fallout 4 stutter so much before. Whenever an NPC wielding a gun loads in, a script related to Wars' new ammo types has to run on them. This causes massive slowdown in areas with many NPCs. Sometimes their sustained drops down to 20 FPS for a few seconds, other times the game locks up entirely for a second. It always recovers, and generally the stutters happen long before you get a chance to see, much less fight, any enemies, but they are a consistent annoyance. In the initial version of Wars they were even worse, but they're still bad. The stuttering is at its worst in areas that were already performance-intensive in vanilla due to high NPC counts. Corvega and downtown Boston always gave me lag when trudging through them. Perhaps worse still is the loading time issue. Initial loads from the main menu take a lot longer when using Wars, and as you invest time into a save, loading times will become longer still. I noticed that my save games became larger and larger as time went on, and by the 30-hour mark they were twice as large as save games on a 50-hour character using a basic Frost load order. Loading that same 50-hour Frost character took 8 seconds, while loading my 30-hour Wars and Peace character took about 25 seconds. Loading an early game Wars save took only 15 seconds. So, in short, you can expect initial loading times to be twice as long as normal, and get even worse the longer you play. Thankfully, once you're in-game, it doesn't take any longer than normal to go through loading doors. If that was the case, I wouldn't have played these mods for 3 hours, let alone 30. Wars' headline feature is its replacement of most vanilla ballistic weapons with their real-life counterparts. The assault rifle becomes an AR-15, the 10mm pistol becomes a Glock, the combat shotgun becomes a USAS-12, and so on. Weapons that aren't replaced are at a minimum renamed and given new attachments and sometimes animations. For example, the hunting rifle is now a Remington 700 with a right-handed bolt handle. The laser rifle is renamed AER-9 like it was in Fallout 3's lore. Also added are completely new weapons like the Scorpion and Mossberg shotgun to fill in some of the gaps with Fallout 4's vanilla weapons roster. Generally speaking, the quality of the weapons is sky high. Only the Smith & Wesson 1905 revolver disappointed me by having very few attachments, but that's an early game weapon nobody will use for long anyways. Again, in general, the weapons are excellent. If Wars was nothing but a weapons replacer, it would be an incredible 10 out of 10 mod worth recommending to anyone, but its changes unfortunately go much deeper. A huge feature Wars adds is ammo subtypes, inspired by the classic Fallout games and Fallout New Vegas. This is a feature Fallout 3 and 4 both lack entirely, and adding it is no easy feat. Giving every ammo type multiple subtypes is an awesome idea, but its execution in Wars is quite flawed. To start with, this feature is what causes the stuttering and load time issues, so on that basis alone, it would be nice if there was an option to remove it from the mod. Beyond that, switching ammo is done via a cumbersome menu that can sometimes fail to appear for reasons I don't understand. At least once I've been killed because I ran out of ammo and wasn't able to switch to my other ammo types. Worse still, and this happened twice during my playthrough, sometimes the ammo switch menu comes up twice and you can accidentally change your weapon's caliber. I made my 380 Scorpion fire 38 special by pure accident, and since I wasn't carrying much 38 ammo, this mistake really screwed me over. And worst of all, the game crashed on me more than once at the exact moment the ammo switching menu popped up. I don't think that's a coincidence. If you can look past the problems, using ammo subtypes can be enjoyable. With overpressure rounds, for example, you can extend the usefulness of early game trash calibers. With slugs, you can add a lot of range to your shotguns, there's tracer rounds that light enemies on fire, there's match grade ammo that's better but harder to get. This feature can be fun when it works. It's the 1% of the time when it doesn't work that's the problem. Another big feature is the physical magazine system, and boy do I hate this one. I played for 20 hours with it on before disabling it, and I didn't regret turning it off even once. All this feature really does is force you to look down and spam E every single time you reload so you don't lose the magazine you just dropped. If you don't pick your magazines back up immediately, it can be very difficult to find them after combat ends since they blend in with the other detritus on the floor. I fail to see what this system adds to the game. It's not a challenge, but rather a persistent annoyance. It certainly doesn't make you consider using non-mag-fed weapons like shotguns more often, because those weapons are already powerful enough to justify using without hurting mag-fed weapons. Because I was having carry-weight problems, I frequently cleared out my inventory and then forgot to bring spare magazines with me when leaving my base, which caused me no end of trouble. It's an easy mistake to make because there's no HUD element telling you how many magazines you have for your current weapon. Not that that would help me because the HUD didn't work at all, but still. The best part about this feature is you can turn it off, thank fuck. Two great features are Selective Fire and Underbarrel Grenade hotkeys. I have nothing bad to say about them, other than sometimes the hotkeys didn't work. Usually at the same time the ammo swap hotkey wasn't working either. Regardless, it is nice to be able to change fire modes without visiting a workbench. Wars heavily gimps legendary weapons by removing most of the unrealistic effects like Neverending or Deadeye. Now, all you'll get with legendary weapons is minor boosts to damage, fire rate, and reload speed. Nothing to really write home about anymore. I think this is a perfectly good change. The legendary system definitely needed to be reined in. Wars doesn't touch legendary armor, that's Peace's job. Wars modifies the damage increasing perks to make them reduce recoil and increase accuracy instead, but the new bonuses are hardly noticeable. As a result, these perks are far less important. Gun Nut and Science are even more useful than normal since you'll need them to build ammo factories as well as modify your weapons. If you don't have at least 6 intelligence, you'll have a very bad time. My character only had 3 intelligence, and as a result I was locked out of disassembling ammunition, which made it very difficult to craft new ammo. Strength is also more important than before because weapons have strength requirements, and unlike the strength requirements in Fallout New Vegas, these actually make a huge difference. If you don't meet the requirements, you suffer a massive debuff to recoil, movement speed, and aim stability. My test character only had 1 strength because I spec'd into agility and luck, imagining that I'd make a stealth sniper kind of character. That dream was squashed once I realized that all long rifles now have high strength requirements, making them difficult for my character to use, so I carried a crappy Scorpion as my daily driver for a long while, which made things hard for me. Wars adds a weapon condition system, which I think a lot of people will dislike, but I thought it was okay. I found it stupid that you need Gun Nut just to clean your guns, making it even more of a mandatory perk than it already was, and Blacksmith is necessary for cleaning melee weapons, so you had better have 3 strength. Anyways, every time you use your weapon, its condition deteriorates. When condition gets too low, there's a risk of damaging your weapon, degrading its receiver quality. At 0 condition, you can't use the weapon anymore. This is a very fair and forgiving system, although it encouraged me to hoof it back to base more than once because a full auto-suppressed Scorpion loses condition very fast. That's fine by me. Full auto weapons need some kind of balancing mechanism now that they do equal damage to their semi-auto counterparts. I never had any problems with this system, but it would be nice if it could be turned off for those who hate weapon degradation. You no longer gain health when leveling up. Health is now entirely dependent on your endurance and ranks in the Life Giver perk. That's excellent. Oh, and you don't have to worry about dying in one shot all the time. Wars is pretty good about giving you a chance to recover after making a mistake. Wars completely removes sneak attack criticals for ranged weapons and cuts their damage in half for melee weapons. This is an understandable change. The Better Criticals perk also only increases critical damage by 10% each rank instead of 50%. The player takes full damage in VATS now instead of just 10%, which can be really tough. These changes make VATS builds less powerful, but still viable. VATS needed a nerf anyways, so I'm not complaining. Headshots have a 4 times damage multiplier in Wars instead of 2 times like vanilla. Limb shots do 25% less damage than vanilla. This makes going for headshots more important, especially since, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the limb damage multiplier is applied before damage resistance, so aiming for the head with a low damage weapon can help bypass more of an enemy's armor. At least that's how I want to believe it works, I'm not sure. Anyways, Wars rebalances the health and armor values of every NPC and creature in the game, and it's done in a very interesting way. There are no ridiculous bullet sponges like vanilla, but it isn't completely realistic either. Even lightly armored humans will tank multiple headshots if you're using low-caliber weapons with crappy surplus ammo. The balancing reminds me of Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl, where early game weapons suck ass and you only start getting consistent one-hit kill headshots later on. My problem is I was sort of stuck with early game weapons for a long time due to building my character wrong. Super mutants can be really tough to fight with pistols and SMGs unless you switch to armor-piercing ammo. Even tougher are synths, robots, and turrets. They can take a beating. Running into a unique synth with the Future Shock pistol early on was a horrible experience. Pulse ammo is good for dealing with robots if you can find it and your weapon supports it. I was surprised to find that shotguns are very effective against armored enemies, even when loading buckshot. I suppose that's an artifact of how Fallout 4's damage resistance system works. Armor penetration is calculated based on total damage, not per pellet damage. I've found the best way to fight turrets is to wait until they run out of ammo and then poke them with a knife until they explode. Unfortunately, laser turrets never run out of ammo, which makes them really nasty opponents. NPCs using ammo is an interesting feature though. It introduces some risk versus reward into the game. If you kill enemies quickly, you can find more ammo on their corpses, but if you wait behind cover for them to expend all their ammo, you can easily kill them when they run at you swinging melee weapons. I like this feature a lot, although it can result in you finding more surplus ammo than you know what to do with. Since I couldn't disassemble ammo, I ended up selling useless types whenever I got the chance. I could craft ammo, but finding the materials was tough, and in order to craft anything besides surplus ammo, you need to find magazines hidden in the world. You can buy intelligence on magazine locations, but that costs a lot of caps. Many players will no doubt love the ammo crafting mechanics, and they'll set up huge ammo factories. Personally, I'm not much of a settlement guy, so ammo crafting didn't interest me much, but don't let that dissuade you. There's some other small changes. Wars increases the lifetime of cartridge cases left on the ground, but not by much. If you're using a mod that makes cases stay longer, let it load after Wars. You know that searing bloom that pops up whenever you use a stealth boy? Wars adds it to frag grenades and mines, so enjoy your retinas being burned whenever multiple explosives go off. This is most noticeable during the Hunter-Hunted mission when you have to kill a courser, because there's a lot of fake explosions going off to simulate gunners fighting the courser. I found it annoying, but maybe some people won't mind. Explosives also now emit shrapnel in a large radius. The practical effect of this change is minimal. You might get a bit of extra chip damage out of your grenades, that's all. Midway through my playthrough, I realized I had a nasty problem with weapon glow sights being way too bright and having way too much bloom. I wasn't using any ENBs or weather mods, so that wasn't causing the issue. Luckily, I found a little batch file mod called No Bloom that completely fixed my problem, and honestly the game looks way better without bloom and eye adaptation. I can't really hold the glow sights issue against the mod since I believe it's a graphics card dependent problem, and it's easily solved. On the whole, I'm very torn about Wars. It has some good features, but I can't help but feel I'd have a better experience if I made my own load order with a bunch of smaller mods. Then I could have more weapons, a more realistic damage model, and better performance. That's why I think a Wars Light mod would be awesome. You could build a huge load order using it as a solid base. Unfortunately, the way it is now, 90+% of mods are going to be incompatible, and that's a shame. Next, I'll take a look at Wars' lesser half, Peace. If Wars is a one-stop shop for altering everything about Fallout 4's combat, Peace is the same, but for its non-combat elements. The most prominent and worst change Peace makes is to Carryweight. This especially burned me because I made a 1-strength character, but even with higher strength, you will feel the pain. That's because the base Carryweight is now 10, yes, 10 pounds, with 1 extra pound per point in strength. Additional Carryweight has to be earned by wearing clothing with a lot of pockets. For much of my playthrough, I chose to wear a Surveyor outfit despite it offering no protection, simply because it gave me an extra 17.5 pounds of Carryweight. The only saving grace is that weapons and armor weigh less when you have them equipped. I suppose that's there to simulate being able to carry more on your back when a weapon is in your hands, but it just leads to more frustration when you flip between being over-encumbered and not based upon what weapon you're holding. The low carry weight completely changed up my playstyle. I could only ever carry 1 or 2 small weapons along with a tiny amount of medical supplies and ammo. I didn't want to use companions, but I was left with no choice but to keep them as pack mules to hold loot and extra ammo, food, and medical supplies. You get 1 extra strength for being well fed, and another point for eating grilled radstag, so I made sure to always be topped off on radstag meat. I had no choice. A related problem is Peace adds strength requirements to armor, like Wars does for weapons, so my 1-strength character could only ever wear light armor. What the hell is it with these mods making strength the most important attribute? It was already powerful enough in vanilla, but Wars and Peace make it absolutely vital to have at least an average amount of strength. If you build your character wrong, you're fucked. The strong back perk has been made a lot less useful, so if you want a decent carrying capacity, you'll need to use power armor and add load-bearing equipment onto it. I was lucky enough to find a decent set of power armor with LBE already equipped, and I used it exclusively to make loot runs whenever I had enough spare fusion cores lying around. You can use the science perk to build refrigerators at your settlements, which are necessary because Peace adds a food spoilage system, and fridges are the only safe place to store food. Because I didn't have 6 intelligence, I guess I was just too dumb to live and had to deal with my food spoiling all the time. I noticed that meat given to companions didn't seem to spoil very often. Maybe the spoilage check doesn't happen as frequently with some containers. I could never predict when food would spoil. It seems to be random. It might take a day, or it could take up to a week. Peace also adds a butchery system. You can't just grab meat straight from an animal's corpse anymore. You have to equip a knife and then spend a few hours butchering it, which comes with a risk of disease or predators ambushing you. As a consequence of the Butchery system, you can't find legendary items on legendary creatures anymore, and you also won't find things like bottle caps or junk on dead animals. Cooking requires wood now, but wood is one of the easiest crafting materials to find, so it was never an issue for me. You can build a powered stove that doesn't require wood, but I don't see the point. The end result of the spoilage and butchery and cooking mechanics feels like a wash to me. These mechanics don't add any difficulty over vanilla, only extra tedium. I was kind of worried at the start of my playthrough that radiation might be a big threat, but it turned out to be no worse than vanilla survival mode. Radaway is plentiful, doctors can wipe away your rads for a pittance, and you can now drink Brahmin milk to remove rads. Sadly, you need the science perk to pasteurize milk, which is another thing you need science for. Holy shit, are you seeing the problem here? So I couldn't really engage with that system. Even so, radiation was never a serious danger. There's a things take time mechanic in settlement building that makes every action, whether it's scrapping or building or cooking, pass time depending on how many settlers you have. If you build a bunch of stuff at your settlement, you can waste a whole day or more. I'm ambivalent about this feature. At the very least, it helps drain away some of your surplus food and water, which must have been the intent behind it. If you don't like this feature, you can disable it, but you should know that Peace changes the timescale to be significantly slower, so without this feature, getting hungry, thirsty, or sleepy will be a much more rare occurrence. ATM machines have been plopped around the Commonwealth, which can be a small source of interest over time. You'd have to insert a lot of caps and wait a long while to see any appreciable return, however. I think at some point, Peace was meant to give bottle caps weight, which would necessitate the use of these ATMs. I'm glad that idea got cut, holy crap. The ATMs themselves are fine by me, although they don't make sense from a lore perspective. Who's setting up ATMs all around this irradiated hellscape? I'm half kidding, but in all seriousness, I kind of expected a mod with such a focus on realism to provide some kind of justification for the existence of these banking conveniences. Stimpaks no longer heal broken limbs. The only methods of healing limbs in Peace are sleeping, which you can't always do, taking Hydra, which is an exceptionally rare drug, or using medical braces, which are heavy as shit, slow you down, and take a long time to work. I hate this, mostly because those damn braces are a pain in the ass to carry around. I wish there were doctor's bags like in New Vegas that could heal limbs instantly as an alternative to braces. Speaking of New Vegas, healing powder makes a return as a less potent but easier to craft Stimpak alternative. You can craft it and many other items at a fabrication bench, which replaces the chemistry lab. Those useless herbal remedies from vanilla survival actually cure diseases instead of being preventative now, which is one of Peace's few good changes. Another good change is disallowing ballistic weave on hats, but allowing it on all clothing with no arbitrary restrictions. This is a nice tweak that makes me sad I didn't get far enough down the railroad quest line to acquire ballistic weave to be able to appreciate it. You can be ambushed in your sleep in Peace, which only happened to me once or twice in my playthrough. It's normally not a bad thing when it happens, it's more free XP. If you don't like this feature, you can configure it or turn it off, but I doubt it will bother many people. Armor legendary effects have been removed or changed, which generally makes them less useful but more plausible. There's no more magical effects like cryogenic or incendiary. Stat boosting clothing is also mostly eliminated. Wearing a lab coat doesn't increase your intelligence anymore. Suits will still boost your charisma, I guess because you look better wearing them, and glasses can increase your perception if you have low perception to start with, so these effects aren't completely gone, just reduced to a level the author believed felt realistic. A lot of perks have been toned down as well. Party Boy reduces your chance of becoming addicted to alcohol instead of making it impossible. Lone Wanderer increases your movement speed instead of reducing incoming damage. Leadbelly reduces radiation damage from ingestibles instead of eliminating it. When leveling up, I often had a hard time picking a perk, not because there's so many good ones, but because most of them didn't give me much benefit. Peace adds a bunch of cosmetic weapon racks and posters, which are no doubt useful for decorators. Cells respawn more quickly in Peace. You'll see cleared locations reset in 8 days instead of the vanilla 20. Since you'll be wasting a lot more time thanks to the Things Take Time feature, this can be very noticeable. Corvega replenished itself with raiders more than once over my playtime. I can't say this is a terrible change, since honestly I don't mind having more enemies to kill. The weight of many junk items is changed, sometimes making them lighter, but usually heavier. Typewriters and telephones are now about 10 pounds each, making them difficult to loot. How the hell am I supposed to get my screws now? In the same vein, a lot of previously weightless items have been given a small bit of weight, so the hundreds of bobby pins and folders you like to lug around will now meaningfully contribute towards filling up your meager carry weight capacity. Maybe I could tolerate these changes if my character was capable of carrying more than 50 pounds. Some items have different components. You can no longer get lead from pencils, which sucks. Thankfully, lead weights still exist and they contain a lot more lead now, so you can buy those and use them in your ammo factory. The power armor in Concord is now Raider power armor instead of T45, and a note was added to justify this change. This is one of the few alterations Peace makes to the game world, the other noticeable changes being the previously mentioned ATM machines everywhere, and there's some medical braces you can loot in hospitals. Also, you find the Pip-Boy earlier in Vault 111. This makes it easier to manage your inventory from the start. Without access to the Pip-Boy, I imagine you'd get over-encumbered right away. Overall, I found most of Peace's features pointless at best and infuriating at worst. I would greatly prefer playing Wars without Peace, but if it sounds right up your alley, more power to you. Those were my thoughts about Wars and Peace. These mods certainly are a mixed bag, but I can appreciate the amount of work that went into them. I hope this video will make them less of an unknown in people's minds, and encourage others to check them out. I also hope that some of the current technical problems with Wars can be ironed out in future updates. And yeah, that's it.
Toodles!